Welcome back. You are going to be hearing a lot about Pennsylvania and its big cache of electors leading up to Election Day. Both candidates, Harris and Trump, they need that state to boost their chances of winning the White House. So that's why Trump is in Oaks, Pennsylvania. Harris is in Erie, Pennsylvania, all of them stumping for votes. Let's go live now to CBS News political director Finn Gomez. Finn, it's Monday, it's closing time, closing argument time. How vital are these last-minute stops in these battleground states for both candidates?
Yeah, they're crucial right now. I mean, we're 22 days out until Election Day, Reed. So every single moment that these candidates can go to these battleground states, these crucial battleground states, these blue wall battleground states, and also those Sunbelt states, of course. But let's look at the blue wall states, or the so-called blue wall or Rust Belt states. That's Pennsylvania, that's Michigan, that's Wisconsin. If you look at our data, at Anthony Salvanto's great polling unit, it is a dead heat of a race. So it's a battle of margins, Reed. So when they go visit a certain area like they are today, they're both going, as you mentioned, both going to the great state of Pennsylvania, the Keystone State. And we'll look at where they're going, Reed. Donald Trump is going to Philadelphia, right? That is, or the Philly area, which is a crucial area for who? Kamala Harris. She's expecting big turnout there if she wants to be competitive in that state. And right now, it's a dead even polling in that state. And then, of course, Trump is going to Erie. Harris is going to Erie. Trump is going to Philadelphia. And those are two areas where they need to have their supporters come out to sort of counter the strongholds that the other candidate has in those respective areas.
You talk about strongholds. They're literally drilling down county by county, seeing what the makeup is per county. What is polling showing specifically? Who's ahead? Are we getting any sort of an early sense?
Like, according to our data, Reed, it is on a national level. Harris is up by about 3 points. That is within the margin of error, of course. But really, what I really look at is that because the national level, you look at those national polling, Reed, it's really sort of the momentum, who's got the momentum. But really, what I look at are those battleground states, those 7 key battleground states. And if you look at that, our recent polling, it is a barn burner. It is a dead heat. It is as close as this has been in decades. So every little bit counts. They need their supporters to come out. They need to get those people on the bubble to come their way, and that's what they're doing right now. It's this last stretch, this crucial last stretch. We're in the fourth quarter here.
Fourth quarter. Finn Gomez, our political director. Always good to talk to you. Dead heat environment in these battleground polls. Well, Hurricane Milton's worst is over, but the trail of destruction is evident. What you're seeing is not a lake. It's not a river. That's a neighborhood where people have addresses and where the mail should be going. This is Lithia, Florida. And 4 days after it made landfall, Milton's heavy rains inundated this southeastern part of the state. Rising waters right there. A number of people are not going to return to those homes for quite a while. They're waiting for the floodwaters to recede. But we understand that this is something that will go on for several days. In fact, Jess, some parts, the floodwaters will rise even.
It's all throughout those communities. We're not only keeping a close eye on the flood activity, but of course, all the damage from the tornadoes and the heavy winds too. So as we continue to track the tropics, as Florida is starting to gain that recovery process, we're still keeping a close eye on what's to come because we're 6 weeks left of the hurricane season right now. And right now the tropics are relatively calm, which is great news. Let's actually head into that right now. Starting off in the tropics, there's some activity just near the Bahamas, but that has nothing to do with hurricane activity. It's just showers continuing to sweep off into the east. And as we head more into the east, you'll continue to see not a lot of heavy activity as we gear up for the rest of this week. This is good news as the tropics stay calm as Florida is starting to recover. Now let's recap Hurricane Milton real fast. Some of the things I want to mention on top of those damaging winds, tornadic activity, and of course all that storm surge. They saw over 18 inches within 12 hours near St. Petersburg. Just near the mouth of Tampa Bay at the Egmont Channel, they received 105-mile-per-hour winds as that hurricane made landfall into the overnight hours. And to add to that, this is Florida's third hurricane of this season alone that made landfall. There was over 126 tornado warnings. popping up all throughout the map of Florida as we went into the overnight hours that night, early morning hours the next day. Those outer bands had a lot of activity to them. So you think the eye of the storm is always the worst. However, you forget to think that those outer bands the day before even started causing that tornadic activity. We'll continue to keep a close eye on the Florida area as we head into the coming days. This is going to be one of those storms, Reed, as we gear up for the next couple months, years. They're still going to be recalling the moments of what that did for their community members. So.
Wow, more than 200 people killed, so many injured, and it goes on. Our thoughts with everybody.
Absolutely.
So let's show you this. Video to our monitors from Lebanon tells the story of at least 21 people killed when an Israeli airstrike hit an apartment building. You're looking at it right here in northern Lebanon today. This attack comes after Hezbollah launched a deadly drone strike on an army base in northern Israel. In that case, 4 Israeli soldiers killed, and all of them were the age of 19. 60 others, by the way, injured in that attack. So as Israel ramps up its defense, the Pentagon sending American troops to Israel, along with a new missile system that helps to protect Israel as tensions with Iran escalate. In fact, in Gaza and Lebanon, hospitals are overflowing. CBS News foreign correspondent Deborah Pata went to one medical center in Lebanon where doctors say the overwhelming number of patients forces them to stay on the job both day and night.
This nameless little boy screams helplessly. "Daddy," he cries over and over again. This past week has seen hospitals in Gaza once again overwhelmed with casualties following days of fierce Israeli bombardment across the territory. In Lebanon, medical facilities are also under pressure. At the Rayak Hospital, we met 16-year-old Ali. The first thing you notice about him are his eyes. They are haunted. "I'm in pain and I'm so sad," he told us. Ali was home with his family when his village was hit in an Israeli airstrike. "I wanted to run and help my mother," he said, "but I saw my leg was gone. I blacked out." He woke up in hospital to find he had indeed lost his leg. Nurse Muntaha has been so busy that she and the rest of the staff have been sleeping at the hospital. "It's very hard and unsettling," she said, "but I am morally obliged to be here, not only when there's peace, but also when there's war." But it's not easy for her to see children suffering, like 6-year-old Sausan with 6 fractures to her skull and shrapnel removed from her brain. She is still in so much pain. Not even her mother's loving touch can ease the hurt and erase the horror.
We have a chance now to talk to foreign correspondent Deborah Pata live here on the stream from Beirut. Deborah, just a visceral reaction to what we saw there. One flinches when we see or hear a child in pain. What else did the director of the hospital have to say about the type of injuries they're seeing?
Well, Reed, this hospital is in the Bekaa Valley, which has come under heavy Israeli bombardment. It's part of their expanded war, not just in the south, but in Beirut and now the Bekaa Valley. So they are receiving traumatic injuries on a daily basis, a lot of head and abdominal injuries requiring often several surgeries. And the director told us that in the last 2 weeks, they have only been treating civilians. This is a private hospital. The Lebanese economy, as you know, has been in a dire state for 5 years now. So there really is no other financial support. And while they are coping at the moment, if this war escalates further, they simply won't be able to handle the number of injuries that are coming in. In the short space of time we were there, there was another strike nearby, and 2 of the victims, young girls, were rushed to the emergency unit where we could hear their agonizing screams. And as you said, it's really difficult to see people in pain, but to see and hear children, that cuts really deep, Reed.
And Deborah, we are wanting to go deeper a little bit. You mentioned in your report that staff are literally sleeping there at the hospital. Why is it that way for them, where a hospital is now their temporary home? And what's morale like for those who are first responders, not only, as she said, during times of war, but also during times of peace?
Well, partly it's because they're so busy, so they have to be there 24 hours. but it's also because it's very dangerous. Just going to and from work could be very dangerous for them on a daily basis. And as you hear from the nurse in our piece, this is their profession, regardless of whether it's war or peace, and there is tremendous dedication from the staff, as you know, who are sleeping in this hospital. And that is another burden the hospital administrators have to bear. They're also feeding all these staff members who are living at the facility. Nurse Muntaha told us that she leaves her family behind, and it's really not easy to care for patients, but at the same time worry about your loved ones. And there's a very real fear that the hospital could also be struck in a strike, which is something that sadly happened over the weekend. Not the hospital, but there was another strike in the area very close to where that hospital was that we visited. We also went to one of the villages not far from this hospital, the village of Khodo, which is, like many in that area, been hit numerous times by Israeli airstrikes, and spoke, to a man whose brother, a much-loved teacher, and his grandson, 10-year-old grandson, were killed. But the thing about that village was that everyone had a story, Reed. Everyone had a story of trauma to share. There was another house nearby where a father had been found in the rubble holding his 2 daughters close to him. They'd all been killed in that strike.
So let's talk about the trauma on the other side of the line. Hezbollah has claimed responsibility for the drone attack on that Israeli base. The U.S. is now sending in troops to back up Israel. We understand that 4 soldiers, 19 years of age, are killed. Their families are grieving their loss. Has Hezbollah responded to the move of the United States to back up Israel in this specific instance?
Well, Hezbollah has claimed responsibility for the attack. They said it was in response to the Israeli military strike on central Beirut last week, in which over 20 people were killed. Most of the strikes before this were in the southern suburb of Dahir, which is regarded as a Hezbollah stronghold. Now, this latest strike last week was something of a shock for many in Beirut, because it hit deep into the heart of the capital, about 15 minutes, in fact, from where we are right now. And our driver lives just a few meters away from where it happened. Fortunately, his family was all fine in there. So that is what they're saying, that is the reason for this. But the issue is going to be the American troops going to Israel. That is something that won't be received very well here. Many people are already saying that this could further inflame what is already a very tense and dangerous, difficult situation, that it could inflame an escalating conflict in this region. There was a hope that there could be some kind of de-escalation. There have been a lot of diplomatic efforts, but now with those U.S. troops going to Israel to bolster a defense in the event of a possible attack by Iran, that will run the risk of really exacerbating tensions here as well, certainly on the Lebanese side. The question will be asked, does this help to reduce the possibility of even more escalation? Or, as many say here, could this further aggravate this conflict, which at this point is going to be a lot harder to turn back from? Reed?
CBS News senior foreign correspondent Deborah Pata, thank you so much for that report. When we come back, we'll be in the United States again, to New Jersey. Why a train crashed, went off the rails, left 1 person dead. We'll be right back. Video to our monitors out of New Jersey tell the story of a person killed and many others hurt when a light rail commuter train hit a tree that fell onto the tracks. This all happening in a place called Mansfield Township, which is about 30 miles northeast of Philadelphia. Our partners at CBS News Philadelphia telling this story from that neighborhood level.
Back to our breaking news we're following this morning. A train operator is dead and several others injured after an NJ Transit train hit a tree on these tracks here. This happened in Burlington County just after 6 o'clock this morning on the River Line near Route 130 in Mansfield Township. Our Keisha Bailey is following this breaking news for us. She's joining us live from a staging area in Bordentown. Keisha, good morning. And what is the latest that we know from officials at this point?
Yeah, good morning, Janelle. Just a devastating crash here. As you mentioned, one person died. They happened to be the train operator, and nearly 20 people were injured. Now, I did get the opportunity to speak with some of these family members, and they said a lot of these passengers were just heading to work. Now, as you mentioned, we're just a little ways down from the staging area, but you can take a look at US 130. This entire area has been blocked off, but we want to take you to the scene that we saw when we first arrived this morning. This was what it looked like right around 6 o'clock when we arrived to Kinkora Road and Route 130. Paramedics, as you can see, lined the highway on standby, waiting to assist any injured passengers. Now, New Jersey Transit says just after 6 a.m., the train was traveling southbound from Trenton when it struck a tree north of Roebling Station. In total, 36 passengers were on board, 16 suffered non-life-threatening injuries, and the train operator was also killed in this crash. Now, the remaining passengers were accommodated by a bus. New Jersey Transit Police will remain on scene investigating what happened. Now, within the next 30 minutes, we are expecting to hear from authorities and officials as to what they know more of, whether it's about the operator or even the people that were injured on this train and what's next. Sending it back to you in the studio.
Tragic situation there, Waukesha. Thank you for that report.
Let's jump the map now to the state of California. You're about to see smoke and hazy skies blanketing parts of Sacramento, that Sacramento Valley this morning from a wildfire torching nearly 3,000 acres. It's called the Shoe Fire, prompted, as we've seen in California all summer long and now into the fall, mandatory evacuations, a lot of unhealthy air quality too.
As soon as I walked out of the house this morning, I could smell it. It was enough for me to think that it was probably nearby.
485 firefighters doing battle with this blaze. They have it about 7% contained at this hour. We'll be watching because air quality, like we say, is not great. Live look at Houston, Texas now, where it's going to be another hot day in Houston. Jessica's watching this one. You watch this, you hear the reports out of Arizona, out of Texas, Jess, and it's hard to believe that we are in pumpkin spice latte season.
It is fall, and it's wild to also think that we kicked off the beginning of fall a couple weeks ago with record-breaking heat as a heat dome swept throughout those communities in the Southwest. And we're getting a repeat of that as we kick off this work week. Areas like Houston, Phoenix, all the way over into Salt Lake City dealing with record-breaking highs today. Phoenix at 101 this afternoon. And while we're dealing with the heat over in the Southwest, we're dealing with something completely different over here closer to Iowa with freeze warnings and frost advisories in effect. Heading into the evening hours tonight, heading into the next couple of days, as we're gearing up for a very large storm that's going to sweep all throughout the Northeast. This is going to be the first major cold front that comes in from the continental U.S., bringing in a series of really cold nights. I mean, about 10 to 20 degrees below average, heading into those daytime highs too, and a lot of rain and potentially some snow too associated with it. Taking a look right behind me, I want to show you what the Northeast is gearing up for. This cold front's going to come in quick as we kick off this week. Heavy rain anywhere from New York all throughout Maine, stretching down into the Ohio Valley too. This is all the way into the evening hours tonight, early morning hours tomorrow, a similar trend. We head into Wednesday's forecast and we're getting more of that heavy rain. We could even see scattered thunderstorms all throughout the Great Lakes, stretching over into Maine. That's where we're going to keep a very close eye on, but it doesn't last long. Once we head into the rest of this week, the Climate Prediction Center is showing above normal conditions heading into early next week. So yeah, they're getting a major cold front, but then a heat wave right around the corner, Reed.
All right, thank you so much. Hey, let's take it back to Florida, where Governor Ron DeSantis is in Palmetto, Florida right now. He's giving an update to the people in that area on the state's aid and recovery efforts in the wake of Hurricane Milton. Here's what he had to say just moments ago.
So following Hurricane Milton, initial damage assessments indicate potential losses of over $200 million here at Seaport Manatee. Now, a lot of those losses are insured, but some components are not. Damage to the port includes the loss of 10 out of 13 on-site warehouses, 3 of the 10 port-owned docking facilities, as well as damages to their offices. The uninsured losses of the port include repairs needed for 3 damaged berths, new dredging required in state waters, repairs necessary for port security and access systems, and significant damage to the port container yard. Now, our seaports are working to mitigate impacts for any interruption in any of the other ports, and as you saw with Port Canaveral surging fuel, they'll likely continue to do that, but ultimately we want everybody back full throttle as soon as possible. So To minimize impacts to Floridians and to ensure Seaport Manatee gets back to full and efficient operations as quickly as possible, I'm today announcing that the state of Florida will provide $9.5 million to jumpstart the recovery and help repair the impacted infrastructure. This investment will include $5.5 million for emergency berth repairs and dredging in state waters, $3.5 million for immediate security needs and access control, and $500,000 to support planning activities for fortifying port infrastructure.
Governor Ron DeSantis talking dollars to help people who are victims of Hurricane Milton recover in Florida. All right, when we see it, you see it. We just got some breaking news, some information about threats to FEMA workers in North Carolina in the wake of Hurricane Helene. In just a minute, we're going to go live to Nicole Skanga with CBS News. She's going to let us know what that reporting is when we come back. All right, so I want to take you back to that promised breaking news, new details over reported threats against FEMA first responders. So authorities say they've arrested a man in connection with these threats that paused some operations in North Carolina, operations and outreach. CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Skanga, we talked to you earlier talking about the problem. Now you're back on the stream talking about what the response is. What can you tell us about who was arrested?
Yeah, Reed, an update here. Authorities in North Carolina have arrested 44-year-old William Jacob Parsons of Bostic, North Carolina. We have the mugshot there. Parsons was arrested and charged with going armed to the terror of the public. He was armed with a handgun and a rifle. Here's what happened. The Rutherford County Sheriff's Office says this arrest was made after deputies were alerted around 1 p.m. local time Saturday that a white male had an assault rifle and had made a threat about possibly harming FEMA employees working after Hurricane Helene and that disaster in the Lake Lurie and Chimney Rock area. Those deputies alerted officers with the local police department and other agencies helping in those relief efforts. That is when FEMA made the decision to issue its stand down to officials. And again, just want to reiterate here that search and rescue efforts are still underway and that FEMA's disaster relief doors are still open. But there was a decision made not to go door to door at that time. Now, Parsons, the suspect here, was later identified by police and transported to the Rutherford County Sheriff's Detention Center Saturday, where he was charged and received a $10,000 bond. He made bond. He was released Saturday evening, while police had initially heard reports of an armed militia. After further investigation, it was determined that Parsons acted alone. And I spoke with Captain Jamie Keever with Rutherford County's Sheriff's Office this afternoon. He told CBS News that local law enforcement remains on high alert right now, but that their office is not aware of any additional specific and credible threats connected to this one. Of course, in this information environment, there are concerns that conspiracy theories and bad information regarding recovery efforts could spur further threats, but really relieved to report that at this point, the sheriff's office believes that the suspect acted alone. Reed?
What's really fascinating, Nicole, is that not only the Biden administration at the very top of the federal government saying that this misinformation really lands in neighborhoods and causes a lot of problems, but we're also seeing Sheriff's Department and local municipalities speaking up saying there's no evidence of what this misinformation points to. So thank you for that follow-up. Glad to loop you back into CBS News 24/7 with that breaking news update. Once again, authorities arrest a person accused of making threats to FEMA employees in North Carolina. CBS News Homeland and Security Justice reporter Nicole Skanga, thank you. New video to our monitors out of Asia, and it tells the story of tensions between China and Taiwan. 125 Chinese military units deployed as a part of a large-scale military operation close to Taiwan. Why? Well, China says it's a warning against Taiwanese assertions of their own independence. It's timed, by the way, just 4 days after Taiwan celebrated its National Independence Day. Well, the president there vowing to double down on China's desire to annex Taiwan. Jumping the map to San Francisco, California, and injuries from a military demonstration gone terribly wrong. Watch this video. You know, each year in the Bay Area, the U.S. military displays its might during Fleet Week to thousands of spectators. But let's pull the video up full and you can see it closer. A parachuter from the Navy's Leapfrog team caused people to gasp and cover their mouths right there when it landed on a mother and daughter. Watch this, coming in fast. And then that was one that followed. The mother and daughter were injured. They had to be rushed to a San Francisco hospital. The Navy is investigating this right now. Okay, so the machinist strike against Boeing entering month number 2, costing the company nearly $5 billion. That means Boeing saying they will lay off 10% of their workforce over the next several months. Video out of Stockholm, Sweden, where the Nobel Prize in Economics goes to 3 economists studying why some countries are rich and other countries are poor. They're finding freer and open societies were more likely to prosper. They took a deep dive into societal institutions and connections to prosperity. Their research, they say, could uncover the root causes of why some countries fail and others succeed. When we come back, we'll take you back to Florida and the rescue and recovery efforts, and also the effort to get more aid to so many Floridians right now who are in the dark, still digging out, and in some cases being rescued by boat. Back to Florida in just a minute. Let's jump the map to Pennsylvania and one of the most pivotal battleground states in the race for the White House. Think about this. Pennsylvania has 19 electoral votes, and because of that, candidates Trump and Harris spending a combined $436 million to win Pennsylvania. That's almost $500 million, folks. They want every one of those electors. We're also watching this. The ballot count could take days in the state of Pennsylvania. Why? Pennsylvania state law prevents mail-in ballots from being processed early. So that lag, and you might remember this, dragged out Pennsylvania's count in 2020. It is expected to do the same this time around. So in that environment, election officials are worried that this creates space and time for conspiracy theories and even violence to take root while people wait for that count. Here's what Pennsylvania Secretary of State Al Schmidt told 60 Minutes correspondent Cecilia Vega.
What's the reality? Voter fraud is widespread. Voter fraud never happens.
There is no evidence whatsoever that voter fraud takes place in any way that is widespread at all.
If a non-citizen tried to cast a ballot, would you be able to catch it?
That's just not something that happens, because when it gets identified, there are severe consequences, whether it's prosecution and or deportation from the country.
So another election scenario that could play out in the state of Georgia, where already there's a legal battle over whether ballots should be counted by hand, could spell a delay in that state as well, is this. Here's the backstory. Georgia State Election Board members passed a rule requiring the number of ballots cast be counted one at a time by hand. So a lot of election workers said there's no evidence that hand counting is more accurate. They testified that this spells out a nightmare for them. But Democrats are hoping a lawsuit stops the election board from mandating that hand count. And then going deeper in on this, in the last 4 years, 11 states have attempted hand counting in local elections or even introduced legislation requiring a hand count. Major Garrett found there's no evidence that a hand count is more reliable.
For the last year, Mark Cook has been preaching a kind of low-tech election-doubting gospel in communities across the country.
But we're told, trust the machine, and that is a way to manipulate an election.
Traveling by RV, Cook and his Hand Count Roadshow are part of an election conspiracy movement that's been growing since 2020. One that claims that voting machines can be hacked and manipulated, meaning the only voting system to be trusted is an old-fashioned hand count.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm back.
On this night last year, Cook is in deep red Gillespie County, Texas.
0.1% of Texas still hand counts.
He convinced Republicans here, who run their own primaries, to join the small minority that hand count. Hundreds of volunteers stayed at places like this wine bar until 4:30 in the morning to count roughly 8,000 votes, with numerous errors.
We only have 13 precincts, 12 of which turned in final tally sheets that were inaccurate. We sort of began.
Jim Riley oversees elections in Gillespie County. Is there an actual problem here that needs to be solved by hand counting?
No. The hand counting, in my opinion, did nothing to improve elections in the county.
Riley, a Republican, says Gillespie's systems were already top-notch. Paper ballots tallied by a state-approved scanner and then verified for accuracy.
As much as you've opened up transparency, it still, for some, hasn't been enough.
No, and for some it won't ever be enough.
Something didn't smell right.
Mo Saidi was the Republican chair of Gillespie County when the hand count roadshow came to town.
And nobody provided a single iota of evidence. And it was just this perception that if it's plugged into the wall, they're subject to hacking.
Frustrated by his party's decision, Saidi resigned.
So we were chasing this elusive problem that never existed.
Numerous studies have shown hand counts to be less accurate, more costly, more time-consuming. But that hasn't stopped Cook from preaching. In Michigan, we tracked down his RV to ask him some basic questions. He drove away. And again, in Pennsylvania.
Major Garrett, CBS News. Will you have any time to talk to me?
Oh, I'm going to be doing a lot of talking.
No, I know. Beforehand.
No.
He wouldn't speak to us, but is a regular on right-wing podcasts.
The day after the election through January 20th, if you thought 2020 was nasty, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Even in the wake of Gillespie County's hand count ordeal, the hardened hand count faction is flooding county meetings demanding change before November.
In retrospect, the hand count experience here has been a net what?
I think it's a net loss. If you don't like hand counting, you're evil.
Evil over what Gillespie County officials now say was a solution in search of a problem, and a cautionary tale for hand count advocates everywhere. For Eye on America, Major Garrett in Gillespie County, Texas.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to show you something. Take a look at our monitors. This video to us right now showing a historic moment live as it happened. NASA's Europa Clipper setting out on the exploration to find signs of human life on one of Jupiter's moons. That spacecraft set to travel some 1.8 billion miles. That's a long trip. It'll reach Jupiter by April of 2030. Takeoff was postponed last week due to Hurricane Milton, but there she goes. Now watch this. SpaceX celebrating success in its quest to develop fully reusable rockets. So Starship rocket launched yesterday, and then, you got to watch this, it used mechanical arms to pull that booster right back to the launch pad for the first time ever. CBS News senior national correspondent Mark Strassman shows you how they pulled this off.
We have liftoff. It was one giant step for SpaceX as it launched its most powerful rocket ever built.
We're now down to 3 Raptor engines.
And then flew its first stage booster back to the launch pad where giant metal arms called chopsticks grabbed it. Just 7 minutes after lifting off in Boca Chica, Texas.
What an incredible view!
The uncrewed 5th test flight, a new milestone in SpaceX's vision of developing a fully reusable rocket to return astronauts to the moon and beyond.
What SpaceX is trying to do is build the world's largest and most powerful rocket with the expectation that once it's ready to go, it will be able to carry 100 metric tons into orbit, which is far greater than any other spaceship has ever carried before. And it's expected to be reusable.
Derek Pitts is the chief astronomer at the Franklin Institute.
Reusability of spacecraft for future space exploration is extraordinarily important because reusability drives down the cost of space exploration.
The other half of the spaceship traveled halfway around the world before successfully splash landing in the Indian Ocean. Both stages are designed to be reusable, a crucial step in exploring space.
What SpaceX plans to do in the future for this spacecraft capability, though, is to take astronauts out to Mars.
All right, we are going to blast off to the other side of the country, to the state of California, in a high-profile murder case. When we come back, the trial against a man accused of stabbing to death a very high-profile tech boss in San Francisco. More on that when we come back. Let's go back to Florida now, and that's where we find CBS News correspondent Tom Hansen joining us live from Manasota Key, which is about 70 miles, we understand, south of St. Petersburg. Tom, show us what you're seeing there on the ground and who you're talking to.
Yeah, hey there, Reed. Well, we're standing on a solid foot of sand that has been pushed in from the sea, but it gets so much worse than this. And these are our first looks at Manasota Key, so we're going to be discovering things as we're live with you right now. But the first thing that we see right here, this is the entryway to a hotel. And you can see this is solid cement. It has been pushed basically at a 45-degree angle over the ground. This storm surge was fierce for this community. Milton, in a lot of places, lashed communities with wind, but here is where the storm surge is. And I just want to show you over here, just to give you an idea of how much sand is here. And this car has been completely consumed by the sand, and a lot of homes, we're being told, are also facing a similar circumstance where a wall of sand from the coastline essentially was pushed into the homes. Now, residents here haven't been able to get back in for the most part, but I want to talk to someone who has lived here all of her life. This is Ashley Turner. She is a PIO with Charlotte County, the county that we're in right now. And so, Ashley, you say that you've been going to this beach for your entire life. Yep. What do you make of this?
It's just sad. We've not seen storm surge like this in Charlotte County. This is the reason we tell residents to evacuate this right here. Yeah, this is where I built sandcastles when I was a little girl, had birthday parties, but you know, this community will rebuild. It's devastating to see, but we'll come back stronger.
There have been mounds and mounds of sand, Reed, as we've been driving in. There's such an immense effort of people to clean up here, but how are you doing with the cleanup process? Because the mounds of sand that we've seen, some of which are almost as big as a house, that's immense, and that's only a fraction of the sand that needs to be cleared.
Yeah, so our crews, as soon as fire and emergency management and services are allowed on the roads, our public works crews get on the roads as well. Yeah. They do an initial push to push all of the debris. So since the morning after the storm, they've been on this island trying to push the 4 to 5 feet of sand off of the roads, off of the streets, to make them passable so that our residents and our business owners can get down here. It's been a process, but I know we'll get it done. We'll get it through, clearing debris so that it's safe for residents.
Yeah, this must be so emotional for you. This is your life, your lifestyle, you know, everything.
Yeah, so I don't have friends that live right here on the island, but I have friends that live in Inglewood, and they just bought their first home recently, and the storm surge did significant damage on their homes. So it is personal. Tough. It's real lives. You see swings swinging with 5 feet of sand underneath it. Yeah. And you think about your families and how lucky we are that we saved lives, but this is, why we tell people to leave.
Yeah, I mean, she put such a fine point on it there, Reed. This community, like I said, is just going to be allowed back in as we work our way through the day. But you can just see, I mean, the only time I've seen anything that I can even describe similar to this is a blizzard, and the snowplows pushing snowdrift off to the side of the road, except for you suddenly realize this is dense sand and this is debris, and you get a real sense of the force of this storm. You know, a lot of places, as I mentioned, received the wind, but on the other side, on that southern side of the storm, the dirty side, it pushed in all of this material and this muck, and all these people are going to have to dig out. And so understandably, they are not wanting media around here too much. They are sensitive to that, and we're really just getting a jaw-dropping look at what's left from this catastrophic event. Keep in mind, 2 weeks before this, Hurricane Helene also hit this area as well. Reed?
Well, and these stories so important because it gives us a chance to amplify their stories, and you know, there are ways that people can donate to help out. Tom Hansen, excellent work once again. Hansen in a hurry, always chasing the next chapter. We appreciate you so much. Be safe yourself, my friend. All right, so those stories are so important, and to that point, you can donate today to help out the people in the wake of that hurricane. redcross.org/CBS, or you can call 1-800-RED CROSS. Just one more way that you can help out. Jess, I always love talking to you because you not only know this from a meteorological standpoint, but also you're one of our nation's first responders there, and you see why it's so important.
Yeah, the National Guard has been so active over there. I have a lot of friends who I went to flight school with for the National Guard who are out there, boots on the ground, hands involved with those community members, and they are moving mountains right now as they're trying to get those Florida coastlines back to where they were. But it's going to take months. It's going to be years where you still hear the stories from
Right.
those community members of, oh yeah, that's still damage from Milton. Remember back in 2024, that's just the reality of living in Florida sometimes.
It might take months, but they see you and your peers out there, boots on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
hand serving like you so eloquently said, and they keep hope alive because they see all of you.
You're right,
I bow.
Floridians are strong.
Yep.
They are some strong people over there. So let's dive in real fast to the tropics. I want to start off with what's right around the corner for many community members as we head into the rest of this week. Keep in mind, we still have 6 weeks left of hurricane season, and right now the tropics are relatively calm. If anything, you take a look over in the Gulf of Mexico, you take a look all throughout the Atlantic, not a lot to stare at. However, you look up to the northeast, look at that huge storm coming in from the north. I'll have more on that in just a bit. There's a major cold front sweeping into the northeast right around the corner, but we go back to the tropics. We head over into Florida. Right now, calm conditions are in the forecast for us today and tomorrow. Some offshore showers closer to the Bahamas impacting them, and that's the continued trend as we head into this week. So let's recap Hurricane Milton real quick. The highest rainfall amount we got was St. Petersburg, close to 20 inches of rain just within that 12-hour period as that storm swept into the overnight hours throughout Florida, starting in Tampa Bay, stretching over into Daytona Beach as many Floridians woke up that morning to devastation. Now, the highest wind gust that we got was just close to the mouth of Tampa Bay in the Egmont Channel, and it was 105 miles per hour. This is the third hurricane that Florida had that made landfall this year, and 126 tornado warnings kept lighting up my map all throughout that day. Wow. It swept throughout before the eye of the storm even came into Florida, and it swept throughout those community members' homes and areas and caused so much devastation. The tornadoes, the heavy wind, the storm surge, all of it all at once.
All right, we had our eye on that eye wall and not realizing that you knew it in weather, but all of us watching didn't know that all around it was all the trouble. And it was taking lives as it spun. Jess, thank you. Of
course.
So there's a new tool helping families who are confronting a major need as it relates to elderly care in our country. CBS News correspondent Usher Qureshi with the way that this could help you calculate care, whether it's at home or whether you make the decision to bring in outside help.
A lot of my financial future, a lot of things have depleted, and I'm trying to rebuild because of taking on so much of a responsibility.
For the last 7 years, Sean Lowe and her siblings have been caring for their mother, Terry Montgomery, at home as Alzheimer's dulls her memories.
I don't remember some of these.
The family handles all aspects of her life, including her daily needs and finances.
Some people are doing complicated nursing tasks.
Amy Goyer is a caregiving expert with AARP.
They're doing things that you'd be paying a lot of money to get. We're using medical equipment. We're dealing with oxygen and checking blood sugars and doing a lot of medical and nursing tasks.
In addition to those medical services, there are other costs that families are shouldering as well.
We find that family caregivers spend on average about over $7,000 a year of their own money out of pocket, about 26% of their income.
That's just out-of-pocket costs, right? That doesn't include the time that they are spending caring for somebody without compensation.
Exactly.
An online tool created by Salary.com calculates the cost of caring based on time, type of work, and where you live.
There's so much value in that, and yet family caregivers aren't valued enough. People aren't aware of what they're doing.
New information to better understand the value of caring for a loved one. Usher Qureshi, CBS News.
Let's jump the map now to a tragedy in New Jersey. A train operator killed after a Riverline train struck a fallen tree that was on the train tracks. 23 riders on board suffered non-life-threatening injuries. The remaining 19 rushed from the scene by bus, but it just shows that tree down on those lines caused so much problem and headache. Let's jump the map now to California. Opening statements happening now to begin the murder trial of the man accused of stabbing to death Cash App founder Bob Lee. Arrested and charged for that crime, Nima Momeni. Turns out the two men knew each other. The defense says this is a case of self-defense, that Mr. Momeni acted when he saw Mr. Lee have a flash of anger over an argument with Mr. Lee about Mr. Momeni's sister. CBS News 24/7 with full coverage of this high-profile trial. We will have it every step of the way, every development. And we thank you so much for watching CBS News 24/7, streaming coast to coast and worldwide, whether it's those international issues over in the Middle East or domestically as we approach the end of election season.